The Sefer is called the IYYUN. And the IYYUN was written by Rabbeinu Yitzchak, who was a Talmud of Yehuda Chassid, and he was the Rebbe of the Maram in Rutenburg. The story is, Seder Adoris is brought down a legend, a story like this. That there was a question which is important with regards to a ksuva and with regards to a get. How exactly do you spell the name Akiva? In the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva spelled Ayin Kuf Yud Beis Aleph. Akiva is spelled with the last letter as an Aleph. But apparently in medieval Europe, people were spelling their name with a Hey. So the IYYUN, there was a question. And it says that he was once, this is Seder Adoris brings on this story, that he was once pondering this question. And he went to sleep with this question. And at night, the verse in Tillim, in chapter Tzadik Zayin, 97, the verse, Oy Zarur La Tzadik, Elisha Leif Simcha, came to him. This verse came to him. And when he woke up, he realized that the words Oyer Zaror Latzadik, Elisha Leif Simcha, the last letters of these words spell the word Rabbi Akiva. Oyer is Resh, and Zarua is Ayin, Latzadik is Kuf. So the last letters and the final word Elisha Leif Simcha is spelled with a Hey. So the last letter is not it's the opposite of an acronym, so I'm not sure what it's called. The last letter, the Sofer Tevis of that verse spells, no. The Sofer Tevis, the last letters of those words spell the word Rabbi Akiva. So IYYUN Latzadik, Elisha Leif Simcha is connected to the Nishmas of Rabbi Akiva. So I want to understand this. This is just an introduction idea. But we're going to go a little bit into something deeper connected to the idea of Zera. First I'll quote a few little Gemaras here. And we'll see if we can make a little bit of sense. This Gemara we didn't learn, but we were supposed to learn, and for some reason didn't get into the Sukkos. But it's a Gemara that is brought down also in Rashi in the beginning of Chumash, and the Gemara is in Chulin. The Gemara in Chulin Daf Samach Amud Beis says like this, that Rav Asi Romi Ksiv Vatoitza Oretz Desha B'Tlos B'Shabbata. It says Vatoitza Oretz Desha, that the earth gave Desha on the third of the Shabbos, which is on Tuesday, Yom Shlishi V'Ksiv V'Chol Siach Asada Terem Yir B'Aretz B'Mala Shabbata. And it says that it hadn't yet given grass, it hadn't yet grown on Friday. So the Gemara says Malamed Sheyatzut Shoim V'Amdu Al Pesach Karka, that the Shoim, the seeds, or not the seeds, the desha, the growth, reached the top of the earth, but didn't yet penetrate through the earth. Acha ba'ad Marishan, until Ad Marishan was created. Ubikesh aleim rachamim, and he begged rachmanas, compassion for these shoyim. V'yarduk shamim, and then the rain came. V'tzamchu, and then it grew. So it finally penetrated the surface of the earth after the davening of Ad Marishan. So the Gemara says, "Lamachal shakadosh baruch hu misav l'tivlasim shel tzadikim." It's a very strange Gemara. What does it mean that the zera, the shoyim, were almost birthed, but they were on the surface of the karka, the surface of the earth? And the tefillah of Ad Marishan was what pushed from the surface to be exposed outside the surface. That's one question. We have to understand what this means. Also, what does it mean, Bikesh Aleim Rachamim? That he was Mavakish Rachamim on the Shoyim. Why? What does it need such Rachmanas? What's the Rachmanas on the Shoyim? So they're not growing. But apparently this is like something that's the natural instincts of the shoyim is to penetrate and to come out, and they weren't. So we'll leave this Gemara. We'll get back to it. And I want to quote you another interesting Medrash in Shir Hashirim. The Medrash in Shir Hashirim says like this. Amar Rabbi says like this. Ma'isa be'isha achas b'Tzidon. There was a woman in Sidon, sheshasa asar shanim in baila v'lo yalda, that she was 10 years with her husband and she didn't give birth. And halachically, some people don't follow it. There's a lot of kulas today, but this is a strict halacha is that if a man and a woman are married for 10 years and they don't have children, they should get divorced. Again, it's not something that we follow most times. But the story is that they didn't have children for 10 years. So they came in front of the Rashbi. This is a matter of Shir Hashirim in chapter 1 verse, the second story. And so they came and they asked the Rashbi, what should they do? Amalahan. So the Rashbi answered them, Kishem, just like you got married, just like when you got married, you made a big suda, a big feast. Go home and make a big feast and make a party for the divorce. Just like you make a marriage party, make a divorce party. So they went on their way and they made themselves a party that they're getting divorced. Also, they made a big meal. They drank a lot of wine. And Kivin Shiatu Daito, when the man, the husband, became a little bit intoxicated. He says, we're going to divorce. We love each other. Take anything that's desirable that you like in this home, take to your father's home. You're going to go move back to your father's house. So whatever the most desirable thing that you want, take to your father's home. Ma'asahi. What does she do? After he fell asleep, she told the servants in the home, take his bed and bring it to my father's home. Middle of the night, he gets up middle of the night. Of course, within a minute. And he's no longer intoxicated. Where am I? So he says, what do you mean we are? We're in the father's house. My father's house. He says, why am I in my father's house? He says, because you told me, take the most desirable thing in this home and bring it to your father's house. And you're the most desirable thing, so I brought you to my father's house. So they came to Rashbi. They came back to Rashbi. They told him the story. So he said, Amad v'spal aleim. So Rashbi stood up, and started davening for them, and v'nifkenu, and they had children. It's a Paladic story on many different levels. But they came originally to the Rashbi and told him that they don't have children. Rashbi doesn't daven for them. So Rashbi tells them they should go home and make a party. They get drunk. And she takes them home. And when the Rashbi sees this, then he decides to daven for them. Why didn't he daven for them before? When they first came to him, they were married for 10 years, Rashbi should have Rahmanas to them and say, you love each other, I'm going to daven for you. So something happened in the story where normally, I'll just think about this and we'll get back to it more in depth. Normally, in the normal sequence of halacha, is that a man acquires, is koina the isha, the man is the koina. The man acquires the woman. Let's just use the word mashpia makabel. The man is the mashpia, the giver, and the woman is the makabel. Through this trick that happened, who bought, or who was makna, who was koina, instead of the man acquiring the woman acquired the man. And somehow by the woman acquiring the man, that gave an opening for the possibility for Rashbi to daven. So let's think about that. And we're going to go through another Gemara, a few Gemaras, and we'll see how we develop from this. Here's another famous Gemara. That the Gemara says like this. This is the Gemara in Nazir, Daf Chav Dalet. It's also brought down in Hayris and in Yevamos. The Gemara says, Amar Nachman bar Yitzchak, Kedoila aver lishma, b'mitzvah shaloi lishma. Greater is an avera, a sin that is done for lishma, for a positive intention, b'mitzvah shaloi lishma. So the Gemara says, it's greater, but it's the same thing. Elaim kim mitzvah shaloi lishma. The ksiv, where do we know this from? So the pasuk is a pasuk in Shoftim, which talks about the story of Yael and Sisera. And the pasuk says, "Tevorach Menashim Yael Eishes Chever Akeni Menashim Ba'ayel Tevorach." That the woman Yael, the wife of Chever Akeni, is blessed, just like the women which the Gemara darshans is Sarah Rivka Rachalea. Why is it the Shaloi Lishma? Why is that? That's not relevant. The point is that the story is that Sisera was this great warrior, and Sisera was doing battle with Klal Yisrael, and Yael. It's a long story, but Yael sees Sisera running, and she brings him into the tent. Yael across Sisera, Surah Adoni Surah Elai. He says, "Come to me," and Ishkinina, she gets him drunk. And then it says that she sleeps with him, and she tires him out, and then she takes the oil, she takes the spikes of the tent, and kills him. This is the story of Yael and Sisera. And the Gemara continues, it says like this. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Sheva be'ilo is bal oisa Rasha boisa Shah. This Rasha, Sisera, was with Yael for seven times. So he was very tired. And at the end, she tired him out and she killed him. Gedoyla aver lishma, ki mitzvah shaloi lishma, or mi mitzvah shaloi lishma. Gedoyla aver lishma. So clearly there's the idea of zera, that there's a zera of Yael, of Sisera, and she's makabel this zera from an avera, but an avera is done lishma to kill the enemy of Klal Yisrael. This is a very big topic. Obviously, what does it mean Gedol Avera Lishma? Every time you can do Gedol Avera Lishma, this is it's antinomianism, and this is redemption through sin. This is a very dangerous theology. But the concept of Gedol Avera Lishma, and when do we say does it only refer to? There's also a concept of we find this with Esther. It says the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that Esther is karka oilami, that a woman, according to Shittas HaTosfos in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, that woman is karka oilam. So she, with regards to Aroy, it's yaver val yarik, not yaharg val yaver. The Rambam holds that always is yaharg val yaver because you don't say karka oilam by Aroyas. But the question is, when do you say this principle of Gedol Avera Lishma? We'll see why this is very important. When we say this idea of Gedol Avera Lishma, so there's three important things to know about this. One is, Rav Chaim Volozhiner writes in Nefesh HaChaim, it's in Miluyim Perek Zayin. Rav Chaim Volozhiner writes that this is all Koydem Matan Torah. This principle of Gedol Avera Lishma only applies to Koydem Matan Torah, but everyone asks the question, it doesn't really make sense because Yael is Lachem Matan Torah. So some people say Yael was not Jewish. She was married to Eishes Chever Aknei, who was not a Jew, but the Yalkut said that she was Jewish. It's a tzarachin, exactly. And then he says another principle has to do with Hatzalas Klal Yisrael. It only has to do, you can say that the principle of Gedol Avera Lishma only when there's a Hatzala for the entire Klal Yisrael. It can't be for the Yachid. The Ramchal, who lived after a very serious problem with Gedera Avei Lishma in Jewish history, living after Shabtai Tzvi, Ramchal writes, in Kinas Hashem Tzvakos, Ramchal writes something interesting. He said that the principle of Gedera Avei Lishma only applies to Dinei Arayos. Yeah, it's one of the Svarim of the Ramchal. And he writes that it's only with regards to Arayos. Is everyone's following? Mm-hmm. That's only with regards to Arayos we say this principle, and not with regards to any other mitzvah. You can't say Gedera Avei Lishma only with Arayos. You can't say I'm going to eat chazer because it's for intention, because it's better. Gedera Avei Lishma with Arayos. Arayos is like a little bit. There's some wiggle room over there. So it reminds us of a story. There was I mentioned the story about the brisker of Shiva. I told it to you before, but there's another shtickle funny story. That there was the brisker of Shiva today. Rav David Soloveitchik once walked over to an anicle of the Radziner. Everyone knows the famous Torah of the Mei Shiloach in Parshas Pinchas, right? And he writes as Asara Dargas of Znus, and Pinchas. As Zimri, that he knew that it was a soulmate, because he knew that this was the darga, so he knew that it had to be Shem Shamayim, had to be Gedera Avei Lishma. He knew that was meant to be. So the Brisker Rosh Shiva said, "How do you know? Maybe Pinchas had really 10 dargas of Ritzicha in him, and he really wanted to kill, and then he realized he has to kill the Shem Shamayim. So it was done for a little tzonis." But the truth is, according to Ramchal, it only works for Znus. It doesn't work for Ritzicha. You can't say Gedera Avei Lishma. I would really like to kill the Shem Shamayim, but it doesn't work. Okay, that's one principle. Two principles. The first of all has to be Atzalas Klal Yisrael, and also it has to be Arayos. The Toldos Yaakov Yosef, the student of the Baal Shem, in Parshas Kiseitze also writes another nekuda. He says Gedera Avei Lishma is only when you don't have any anah. You can only say this principle when there's zero anah that you take, and there's zero pleasure that you have from this thing that you're doing. If you have any pleasure from it, you can't say Gedera Avei Lishma. Gedera Avei Lishma is you're doing an Avei Lishma, but you have no pleasure from it. Okay. Why is this interesting, Gemara? The interesting thing. No, so it says Kaka Oilami. Okay. Why is it important? So this idea of that Sisra, Yael and Sisra, brings us to another Gemara. The Gemara talks about, we're going to try to make sense of all this soon. The Gemara talks about the idea of blowing the shofar, Yom Turi Lachem, and the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Lamed Gimel asks the question. The Torah says Yom Turi Lachem. What's a trua? How do you know what a trua is? It doesn't say shofar. It says trua. So what is a trua? So the Gemara says, the Targum writes on trua is Yom Yevava. V'ksiv be'ema de Sisra ba'ad ha'chaloim nishkafa. It says by the mother of Sisra, which is the same story with Yael and Sisra, that when she was standing and waiting for her son to come back from battle. Meanwhile, where was her husband? Where was her son? Her son was together with Yael, and he was getting drunk in the tent, and having Sheva Be'ilois with Yael. She cried out, and that's how we know that a trua sound is a yavava. So the aim Sisra is the makir for the trua to the sound of the shofar. The Aruch on this writes that Yael's mother cried 100 cries, and from the 100 cries we know that we have to blow 100 sounds of the shofar. Now, this is a Gemara. The Gemara is in Sanhedrin. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that Bnei Bonav Shel Sisra Lamdu Torah B'Yerushalayim. When the grandchildren of Sisra became great scholars in Yerushalayim, Umanu, who is this great child? Rabbi Akiva. That Bnei Bonav from Sisra is Rabbi Akiva, the Oizer Ula Tzadik.
It's a Gemara?
It's a Gemara. Mebnei Banav Shel Sisra, Lamdu Torah b'Yerushalayim, Umana Rabbi Akiva. The Marami Panu writes something even more fascinating. This is what the Gemara says. So you have Yael and Sisra. It's a Gedol Aver Lushma, and from that, it doesn't say from that. From there, we know that the Bnei Banav Shel Sisra. So it doesn't say that in the Gemara. It could be sister had other wives, and from Bnei Banav she had kids.
That would be worse.
It comes along the Marami Panu, and he writes this. The Pri Tzadik also brings this down in Rosh Hashanah, but this is a Maimer Chikadin, Perek Hey 11. It says Ba'ada Chaloi Nishkafa, that the mother of sister, which is the maker for Trua of Shofar, comes to the mother of sister looking through the windows, waiting for her son to come back from battle, and he doesn't come back from battle, and he cries. So Ba'ada Chaloi Nishkafa. So he says that this is the Shechina. The mother represents the Shechina. The mother of Sisera, let's say she embodies the quality of the Shechina, is crying because she knows that Sisera has a nitzitz of Kedusha, has a spark, has a zera of Kedusha that has to be extracted. And she's afraid that he's going to die in battle, and it's not going to be revealed. Ad shenesar menu yael bebilo shlishis misheva bia shel Sisera. The Maram Panu writes that the pasuk over there, when it talks about the beilus, that she slept with him, it says 7 languages of sleeping. The third one is said in the language of shachav, which is the normal language of shachav, which he slept with her. So it's not. It doesn't sound like a rape, or God forbid, it doesn't sound like something that's aggressive. He says from that particular be'ilah, from that third bila, Yael became pregnant, and from that seed, Rabbi Akiva came. Who's Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva is Torah Shebal Peh. Then the Marami Panu writes another word. That memechzav ha-Torah shebiksav nikra Torahs Moshe. Torahs Moshe comes from the mechzav ha-Torah, the source of Torah shebiksav is Moshe Rabbeinu. Kach nefesh Rabbi Akiva memechzav ha-Torah shebal peh v'nikra Shmoi. Torah shebal peh, the house of Torah shebal peh is the nefesh of Rabbi Akiva. Where does the nefesh of Rabbi Akiva come from? From the relationship that Yael and Sisera of Gedol Aver Lishma. The Megala Amukis in Parshas Vaschanan Peiches. He writes this clearly, but he's writing from the Maram Panu. Shenitzutze shor Rabbi Akiva bo lo'oila bo isa perek. The nitzutz, the spark of Rabbi Akiva came through this perek. Like the Gemara says in Mei Banav Shel Sisra Lama Torah b'Yerushalayim Umana Rabbi Akiva. Shegedoil Aver Lishma. Because great is the Aver Lishma. Shemin Sheva Bila Shabal Isa Rasham and Bila Shlishis the Itmar Gabei Shachav Velasha Nikia Ba Nitzutz Rabbi Akiva. From that particular third relationship, that's when the Nitzutz of Rabbi Akiva was extracted. There's a Meshech Chochmah in Parashat Tazria, where the Meshech Chochmah writes B'Shem HaMedrash that when a woman is giving birth, she cries 100 cries. The 99 cries is for the pain of about to being born. The 100th cry is when the child is finally released. This 100 cries is the 100 cries of the mother of Sisera, which gives birth to the nitzos of Rabbi Akiva that was hidden in Sisera, which is finally birthed in that moment. And that's why we blow the shofar. And on Rosh Hashanah, to give birth to the new year, we cry the 100th cry and we give birth to the new year. Okay. This is all very klolist idea. And now we have to get a little bit more pratius, more into detail, what exactly this means. So we have to understand what is it, what is Zera. So, B'chlal, Zera. What's the concept of Zera? The concept of Zera is the concept of seed is that there's the Eibusha created the world, God creates the world, and then in the world God implants, Zereya, something that is part of the Koyach Ein Sof, part of the infinite potential. What does it mean? That the plant can create another plant. So it's yesh mi yesh. It's understandable. It's one existence to another existence. But this koyach, that one thing can create another thing, that can create another thing, that's the koyach ein soifi. That's the infinite power that was given within the koyach habriya. Without this koyach hazariya, without the koyach hazara, the creation would be like a makabel. It would just receive. And receive whatever was created from. That's what it would be. But the way the world was created is that plants, humans, animals, that we have the ability, the koyach ein sof, to recreate ourselves and to further this koyach ein sof. But there's a distinction between the koyach ein sof, the way it's in the human being, and the koyach ein sof, the way it's in everything else in creation. The koyach of Ein Sof within creation the koyach flows through the creation. In other words, there's a koyach Ein Sof that's implanted in a tree, in a seed, and that seed creates another seed, that seed creates another seed, but the makabel, the receiver of that koyach, is just furthering the koyach of the mashpia. So when you're looking at a tree that's just budding, the Arizal says that when you say Baruch Hashem Mechaya Mesim, so you say Birchas Kshamim, you say Mechaya Mesim by Kshamim, right? That's the Gemara says. What's the oimik? What's the idea of Kshamim Tchias HaMesim? Because Kshamim Tchias HaMesim is the rain. You pray for the rain and you say Tchias HaMesim, because Tchias HaMesim means the Tchiyah that you see in the universe is Tchias HaMesim. The fact that the world is dormant, and then all of a sudden the trees start budding, is the koyach ein sof at Tchias HaMesim, that you're seeing the resurrection of the dead continuously. This koyach of tchiyah, this koyach of rejuvenation and recreation and furthering the species and furthering every species that they have, is the koyach ein sofi that's working through this, but it's bederach mavir. It's like passing through this thing and continuing. What's the chiddush? What's the novelty of the human being in contrast to all the other animals or all other creation? The chiddush of the human being is that a human being has the koyach habchira, which means the human being can say, I'm giving, let's say we're talking about men, but there's a koyach hazariya also by a woman, that a man can say, I have this koyach ein soifi that can pass through me, but I want to stop it. I don't want to give my seed. I want to hold it back. The plant gives its seed. The animal gives its seed. Everything is naturally giving its seed. The human being can stop this koyach, which means when the human being chooses to give his koyach, so he or she is now the mashpia of the koyach. When a tree gives zera, or when an animal gives zera, the animal itself is just expressing the koyach hamashpia of the Ein Sof. But when the human being gives zera, he's expressing his own koyach ha'ein sofi, because he could stop it and then he chooses to continue it. So in other words, the mekabel becomes the mashpia. The one that receives this koyach now becomes the mashpia to give this koyach. Unlike anything else in creation, we're just furthering the koyach ein sofi of the mashpia. No. It's natural. It's instincts. When the animals eat, the animals they procreate.
Yeah, it's mating season.
It's mating season.
They catch the scent and they.
Yeah, it's a smell, and they go and they're attracted and they move. Okay, a lot of people are the same way. So, talking about okay.
Spring break.
We're going to read a shtickle of Zohar to understand this a little more ba'omek, and we'll get back to all the Gemaras and everything will become understood. The Zohar in Parashat Shemot says like this. It's a harsh Zohar, and we'll have to unpack it a little bit, but this is what it says. There are three people, three situations that doiche the Shechina. There's three people, the three things that are doiche the Shechina, the presence of the Shechina in this world. One is Hashoichevim Nida, the Shachav ben Nida, someone that sleeps with a Nida, someone that gives his seed to a Nida, is doiche the Shechina. Let's understand. Pushes aside, doesn't allow the Shechina to rest. The Shechina is the feminine aspect over here. So the Shechina is the indwelling presence of Hashem in this world. So it represents the feminine, the Makabel. There's three things that don't allow for the Mashpia and the Makabel to become in unison. One is Ashoich V'Manida, someone that gives a seed to a Nida. We'll understand what this means. One is Man Deshachav Bas Kel Necher, someone that sleeps with a Kel Necher, a foreign god, or Necher. I mean, it's like a non-Jew. That's simple. I'm talking about Pshat Nazar. But the third one is, which is very strange, Man de Kotel Bani. Someone who kills his children. It could be fetus, it could be abortion, but let's understand what this oimek of this pshat is. What is the Zohar saying? It's a whole long piece of Zohar, and someone was asking before. The Zohar makes a very big deal about giving seed. Zera, the person's Zera. Very, very, it's a big concept in Kabbalah, a very big concept. Why? Because Zera, the person's Zera, any koyach hashpa of a person is a Zera. Any koyach hashpa, anything that you're giving to, projecting outwardly is your Zera. I showed someone over a few weeks ago that in the Moranayim and Likutim writes that it could be Riyah Zera is considered, if you look at something and there's no reason for you to look at it, it's called Riyah Zera Levatala. It's like a Zera Levatala of seeing, which means any expression that a person is giving, their thoughts, their feelings, their ideas, is anything that's further. What's Zera? Zera is something that's misraba, it's purya virivya. The tree gives to another tree, and the monkey to another monkey, to another monkey. The same thing as a human being. The koyach that's given out to recreate something else. It could be words, it could be actions, it could be impressions. Anything that's coming out of you is your zera. The ultimate zera of a person is actually his real seed, because that is schlepping, that's drawing from all his koyach. His whole being is put into this piece of zera, and therefore that's why a person becomes depleted when they give out their zera, because that's your whole koyach nafshi is being given out in the zera. So the Zohar says that when you give out your zera, whether it means literally or any expression, if you speak, if you want to say something meaningful and you want to give your zera, your essence, you want to give it out, and you give it to a nida, what's pshat nida? What does a nida mean? A nida means is a makabel that's tameh. What's a makabel that's tameh? A makabel that's tameh means that there's no proper receiver. What the strict definition of a nida is the male is giving over the zera to the woman that cannot create. She's menstruating, so she's a nida, so there can't be a furthering, so the zera stops. So when a person, what?
She can be a nida, even if she can.
Yeah, but I'm talking about nida min HaTorah. I'm talking about the concept. No. I'm talking about the concept of mei nida, not the Shevat Tahara. I'm talking about the concept, the mei nida. The mei nida is that she cannot create. So pshat is that you're giving the hashpa, your mashpia, to makabel that cannot receive your hashpa. Then they cannot absorb because they cannot create what you want to do. So let's say a person teaches or giving out an idea, but he gives it on somebody that cannot absorb what they're saying. So you're speaking to a nida. You're giving your koyach to a nida, and that's doicha ragel hashchina. Why is it doicha ragel hashchina? It's pushing away the shchina because there's no presence between the giver and the receiver. What's the shchina? Every single relationship is a relationship in the Zohar language between Yesod and Malchus. Yesod and Malchus means in every single relationship, which you said before, everything's about relationship. The relationship is one person is giving, the other person is receiving. One time you're the Yesod, the other person's the Malchus, the other person's the Yesod, and you're the Malchus. But that's the way the relationship. The Yesod is the masculine giving, and the Malchus is the feminine receiving. What's doiche ragel hashchina, which means pushes away the shchina, which means doesn't allow for the merging between the mashpia and the makabel, is when a person is mashpia on a makabel that can't receive what they're receiving, what they're giving over. Or it's kel necher. It's a foreign influence, which means you're giving over, like Gemara says, like certain times, v'dava zeh asa lo milam haaretz. This is the law, but you shouldn't tell it to an ignoramus. Which means some things people can use your words, even though the words themselves are correct, but if you give it to the wrong type of receiver, they can absorb it and they can abuse it. So when you give your kaiches, you give your nefesh, you give yourself over to someone that's going to abuse what you gave over to them, that's like you're sleeping with a foreign woman. That's not in a good relationship. Or it can mean, the third definition, what the Zohar is saying, is if you create something, but you want to kill the baby. You want to kill the baby. What it means is you don't want it to have an effect. You're giving, but you don't want it to be something to be really created. Like I mentioned this before, also that the Baal Shem Tov writes that the definition of a Torah then imarav malach Hashem tzavakis yivakish Torah mipiu means that when a person gives over Torah and it's para v'rava by the Talmud and it's perpetuating and it is pira v'riva by the student that's receiving the Torah, then it's a Torah that's l'shem shemayim. Then it's a pure Torah. If someone tells you something and all you can do is repeat what the teacher said, then you know that it's not true. The only way you know that it's true if it's being recreated by the receiver. Because that's what the mashpia really should be doing. The mashpia should be mashpia so you could become a mashpia. Like the seed gives seed so it can give seed. The moment you give seed and you say, stop, I want to give you over information because I'm smarter than you, I want to tell you something, you just receive it from me, then you're saying that you're not a real teacher because you're just stopping the growth of that seed. That's when you don't want it, when you're giving something and you're not creating the children of that.
You're just handing over the seed from one thing to the next.
Exactly, but you're not recreating the seed that the seed can create the next seed. So this is the whole concept of zera, is that it's mazriya and it's continuous and it recreates. The chiddush of the human being, which we say that's the difference between a human being and the others. The chiddush of the human being is that the human being is the makabel, becomes also the mashpia. That not only is the makabel allowing the hashpa, the shefa, to go through them, the zera to go through them, but through their free choice, their makabel becomes the mashpia. According to this, Yesh Leima, you can answer these Gemaras in this Midrasha. The Gemara says that the Shoyim were by the karka of the world, but they weren't being expressed. And the Eibusha was Mesava Tzvos Shel Tzadikim. What's the Tzvos Shel Tzadikim? Tzvos Shel Tzadikim is the Bechira. The Eibusha, the Hashem wants that even though the world on its own, without human beings, will perpetuate itself. The plants will create plants, and the monkeys will create monkeys. Everything will perpetuate itself. The taiva of the creation was not that the makabel should just be a makabel. That's not the nisava. The nisava was that Hashem wanted to create something to be like Him, to be a co-creator like Him. That's the taiva of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem wanted to create creators. Where do we have this idea of the creator? When the person is going to choose to mispalal, to further the zera, then that's a chiddush in the bria of the type of zera that's being created. And this can also be understood in terms of the story that we have in Shir Hashirim with the Rashbi. When they came originally to the Rashbi and asked him and told him they were 10 years, they were married, they didn't have children. So the Rashbi looked at them and said, okay, that's part of this, like sometimes is a barren tree. There's, I don't know what it's called, a tree, a snad. It can't create ilan srak. I don't know how to say it in English, but like a tree that cannot give fruit. Sometimes it's a tree that can't give fruit anymore. A barren tree doesn't give fruit, or a castrated animal. I don't know, something doesn't have zera. So the Rashbi looks at this couple and says, the man is the mashpia, the woman is the makabel. That's part of the process of the whole creation story. But the man doesn't have zera to create new children, so he's not going to have children. So how can I daven? So the whole story of Rashbi telling him to make a party, so he can get drunk, and she should be kind at him. Now the makabel becomes the mashpia. She now owns her husband. She bought him. When she bought him, she changed the order of things. Now they can have children. You can daven to have children, because now that once the makabel becomes the mashpia, that's the whole tfilasim shel tzaddikim, where the makabel now becomes the mashpia. Therefore, you can daven to create new zera, which is new children. This is the story. So, in general, I don't know if some of you looked at it today, but in general, we have this idea that the male is the yud, and the female is the hey. But we have this nice shtickle from the Ben Yehoyada, which he writes that Kol Yehudi she'ein le'isha ein adam. The Lashon Gemara is not Yehudi, but nearly b'siyat nishmai atam ki ois aleph the adam tzurasa yud l'mayla remez l'zera av v'yud l'mata remez l'zera aim vav be'emsa remez l'guf. That the aleph is the yud above and the yud below both represent the zera of the av and the aim. Mm-hmm. That means that there's a process where the makabel is just the makabel. But then the way Chazal look at the makabel, the feminine, is the feminine is also mashpia. That it's not just the makabel. That the feminine has to become mashpia. That's actually the tachlis of the whole thing, is that the makabel should become the mashpia. Now we can understand the Gemara about, which you said before, of the idea of, with Rabbi Akiva, that Gedol Aver L'Shma Mitzvah Shaloi L'Shma. What happens over here? Not only are we saying that the chiddush of the human being is that, unlike the regular zera of creation, which just is the makabel, is just furthering the ashba, the koyach ein sof of the mashpia of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the chiddush of the human being is that the makabel can choose when to put it on and when to put it off, when to stop the flow, when to continue the flow. It's even deeper than that. The makabel can choose, even when they receive zera from another person, with their intention, they can direct it into another place. In other words, what happens with Yael and Sisera? Yael and Sisera is a story. It's an affair. It's adultery. Let's say she's a Jewish woman and she's married. It's adultery. The intention of Sisera is for avera. The giving of the seed of the zera that Yael's makabel was in an avera, but Yael's machshava was lishma. So she directed what she received to a different direction, which was given to her. So not only could we choose to give and not to give our zera, and that's the chiddush, because we're the makabel that becomes the mashpia, but we can also choose when we receive zera, when we receive another person's impression, another person's thoughts, another person's energy, whatever the person is giving to us, and we're in the receiving end of that person's zera, The person's riyah, ayin hara, is a zera, a negative zera that's being sown into us. We have the koyach to direct what we receive according to our choices, not according to the choices that was given to them, not according to what that person wanted from you, but what you want from that, what you want from the experience. You can direct the experience as you wish. That's the highest level of the intention of the koyach habchira. That not only could you choose what to give, you can choose how you're going to receive. Exactly, but it's even more. You're directing in letoiv. So what happens from the relationship of Yal to Sisra? Who is the neshama that was nivra, that the nitzvah, the spark that was created in this paradigm, the nitzvah of Rabbi Akiva. What's the Rabbi Akiva? The Rabbi Akiva is the nefesh of Torah Sheba'al Peh. He's the spirit of Torah Sheba'al Peh. What is Torah Sheba'al Peh? Torah Sheba'al Peh is when the mekabel becomes a mashpia. Torah Sheba'al is when you're learning Torah Sheba'al, you're furthering the Eibishter's mashkoyach hamashpia further and further and further. The koyach of Torah Sheba'al Peh is that the mekabel now becomes a mashpia. And that's the oy zarua latzadik, Elisha leif simcha, the highest level of oy zarua is when the nefesh of Rabbi Akiva comes, and that's the kitzur what the idea of zera is, that not only are you giving zera, we have to be careful how we give our zera. That the zera that we give, the koyach, what?
Why is it Akiva Torah Sheba'al Peh?
Because we learned before from the Maramid Pano that he's the nefesh Torah Sheba'al Peh, Kolel that Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva represents, just like Moshe Rabbeinu is Torah Sheba'al, the nefesh, mechzav Torah Sheba'al is Moshe, mechzav Torah Sheba'al Peh is Rabbi Akiva. That the nefesh of Torah Sheba'al Peh comes from Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva represents the mekabel, also the lowly shepherd, etc. His whole narrative is connected with that. The mekabel that becomes the mashpia. It's not the person that's born into royalty, not a person that was given the path. That's Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's from the below becoming the giver. So this is the nekuda of the zera. Zera in the whole of creation is when the koyach ein soif is furthering further through those mekablim. But the mekablim is like derech maver; it's just passing through them, and they're just cool. The chiddush of the human being is that he has bechira. Because he has bechira, he can choose to become a mashpia. That's the Kadosh Baruch Hu misavel shel tzadikim, because they become a mashpia of their zera. They choose when to give their zera, when to say something nice to another person, when not to say, when to look at another person, when to give your koyach to another person. And then we learn from the Zohar that it's very important how we give it. That when we give it, we should give it in a way that the receiver is not a nida, but is open to receive. And it's not someone that's going to abuse what we're giving to them. And we don't want to cut it off, but we want to further it and give it. And that should be a shefa and further and further and further. And then the deeper chiddush is that not only are we have the koyach on what we give, but even what we receive from other people, the other zera that we receive through our intention, through our kavanah, we can change it. We can actually direct it. If someone gives us something, we can choose through our own free choice to make it into whatever we wish. And that's why Yael, Gedar Avera Shma, even the Avera was not only the Avera of her Avera, it was his Avera. He wanted to be shaykh to her, like to sleep with her because it was whatever. And his intention was not relevant. It was what she did, what she received that, and that created the spark of Rabbi Akiva. That's the Nakuda. How do I shut this off? We're going to take Shilas. Yeah.